Good morning. My name is Renee Nellenbach. I'm the principal of this wonderful school, Lakewood Elementary. I wanted to take a minute to welcome all of you and to celebrate this amazing day that we have here on this first day of school. We're honored today to have many members of our press, our amazing faculty, several of our school board members, our superintendent, Dr. Grego, and of course, Governor DeSantis with us here today. We couldn't be more proud of the accomplishments that we've made this year, and without further ado, I'd like to invite him to the podium.
Okay. Well, thank you. Congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you.
Yes. And I also want to recognize Stephanie Woodford, who was the principal here, and have done such a great job. We also have Richard Corcoran, our Commissioner of Education, Superintendent Mike Grego of Pinellas County. Then we have Representatives DeSigli, Coster, and Latvala. So I want to thank you for supporting our initiative. Last year at this time, as many of you remember, it was, oh, you can't do school in person. It's going to be so bad and everything like that. And, you know, our view was we had seen through observed experience and data, other parts of the world, even other parts of the United States, that in-person learning was, of course, vital to our kids' well-being, but also was a low-risk environment as it relates to COVID. And so we felt that every parent needed to be able to send their kid to school in person, that was something that was important. We, of course, provided parents with the ability, if they preferred to do remote, that would be their choice, and we understood that, but we thought it was very important. And it was not easy, and obviously we pushed at the state level, but you had to do, I mean, the rubber met the road here in these districts. I mean, people like Mike and then the principals and the faculty being able to do this in really different situation, in a more challenging situation. And so we really believe that what was done last year by having the kids in person is going to have probably as lasting of an impact as you can have, because the alternative of them not being able to access in-person learning, I think we've seen through other parts of the country, would have just been totally catastrophic. It would have dug us in such a hole. I think a lot of kids would have just totally fallen off the radar. It would have had a disproportionate effect on low income and working class families, would have really been detrimental to a lot of our single mothers. So we thought it was important in this legislative session to recognize what so many of our principals and teachers did. So I called for $1,000 bonuses for all principals and all public school teachers throughout the state of Florida. And with the help of some of my friends here in the legislature, they approved it in the budget, and I signed the budget in June, and we were able to deliver on that. So it was a total of $215 million to make the bonus payments possible, and we think it was something that was well-deserved. I also called for the same bonuses for all our first responders in Florida, and so all sworn law enforcement, fire, rescue, and EMTs, we also got similar bonuses approved from there. I was actually down in Surfside yesterday meeting with the Task Force 1 and 2. We were able to hand out checks to them. We proposed this and signed this before the Surfside tragedy happened, but we did it because we understand when things happen, the folks that wear these uniforms are the ones that we depend upon to come and help protect us, and nowhere was that more apparent than in the response to Surfside. And I can tell you, I was there the day it happened, you know, later that day and every day for probably a couple weeks, and those particularly the Miami-Dade folks and the city of Miami folks, you know, they were on that pile. They were it was very emotional. It was something that they were invested in, and they did save a lot of people, obviously, in those early hours, and they worked tirelessly to find anyone they could. And I know that a lot of the families appreciate all the great effort. And so we were able to do that. Also, our police officers who you know, haven't always been treated well by our society in the last many years, but I think in Florida, we believe integral to have safe communities. You can have good education, jobs, but if the community's not safe, all that stuff can go by the wayside. So we were able to do that in Jacksonville and in Pensacola, so we're happy to do that. This bonuses for the educators, it's about 175,000 full-time teachers and then 3,600 principals, both in the school districts and in some of our other public schools. So we think we'll obviously hand out some today. A lot of these checks should be hitting now. I think some people have already received them, and I think people will receive them this week and into next week. And this builds off some of the work we've been able to do in 2020. We had an initiative to improve teacher pay. We did $500 million to increase salaries for new and veteran teachers. In the most recent budget, we were able to continue that and add another $50 million on top of it. One of the things we targeted was trying to have a higher average minimum salary throughout the state of Florida. We went from $40,000 to now $46,000. You know, as you look going forward, recruiting people to come in. People have a lot of options nowadays, particularly people that do well for themselves academically. You know, we understand it's not like something you're going to necessarily get rich off of, just like with law enforcement, but it does help to be able to provide some better incentives. So we're able to do that, and we think that that's something that is really important. We're going to continue supporting that. We also know in Pinellas County, under Mike's leadership, you got a lot of great people. I went to school in Pinellas County, so I know firsthand, and proud of that. Earlier this year, I announced that Sarah Ann Painter in Pinellas County was Florida's Teacher of the Year for 2022, and so that's really good. And I have with me today teachers Brittany Duquesne, who's a kindergartner teacher, and last year her entire class consisted of students who were not considered kindergarten ready. And by dedicating countless hours to her students and working with them all individually, she was able to make remarkable progress. And by the end of the year, 99% of her students were at or above grade level. So that's... Lynn Price is also here, 5th grade math teacher. When you're in a COVID situation and you have quarantine and remote, it makes it very challenging, but she was able to include all the remote students, a student who happened to be quarantining simultaneously in her classroom to make sure they didn't fall behind. She teaches her students to take ownership of their education and shares with her classroom the data she tracks for each student's performance so they can see where they are and where they need to be. So we thank her for her hard work. And it's teachers like Brittany and Lynn, along with leaders like Mike Grego, and of course our new principal and our former principal, who really help contribute to better outcomes for our children. And to that end, while schools across the country, many of them weren't even open for in-person education last year, Lakewood Elementary went from an F grade in 2019, the last year we issued school grades, to earning an A in 2021. In fact, the school hadn't scored better than a D since 2013. And so this type of turnaround is very rare, but it's a testament to the hard work of everybody involved, the teachers, the administrators, the parents, and students at Lakewood Elementary. And so we oftentimes hear, I mean, sometimes it's like, you know, people think that, oh, you know, it's hard, you can't improve outcomes or all this other stuff. Well, Lakewood Elementary is a success story. It's an example of a tremendous turnaround. And you know what? That turnaround, what that's going to mean for these kids throughout their life, it's going to take us years and even decades probably to measure it. But if you look at all how people perform in elementary school, when they fall behind by, say, 3rd grade, the chance of them having an academic resurgence and becoming very proficient, it just declines considerably. So what you've done is you've taken F performance, made it an A performance, and you've given all these students a foundation that they're then going to be able to build upon as they continue with their schooling. And I have no doubt that the students here are going to have successful endeavors in their life as a result of this. And I think had you not done what you did to help turn it around, some of those students would likely have fallen behind and would likely have not realized their full potential. So it's important. You don't always see everything right away because this is a long journey in students' academic life and beyond. But I can tell you, I think people are going to look back, some of these kids will look back at their elementary school years after they've gone to college or done other things successful and thank some of these teachers and thank the school for getting them on a good track. So I can't thank you enough. We think that this The bonuses were just because of how challenging last year was. We thought it was important that we show a token of appreciation, and the legislature was able to come through and do it. So we're happy to be able to hand out some checks today. We're going to hear from Mike Grego, Commissioner Corcoran, and then we'll hand out some of the checks to the great teachers here and to the principal, of course, who also deserves it. So Mike Grego, do you want to come up and deliver some remarks?
Certainly, thank you, Governor, for being here. What a first day of school, right? I mean, this is my sixth school visiting. I greeted bus drivers early this morning, and I was so anxious to be here. And I want to thank my board for being here, the 4 members who were able to make it here. What a journey this has been. And I want to say publicly to thank Commissioner Corcoran, because I didn't know him all that well. And when this school was in the status, I called him up and asked him to make a visit to Lakewood. And I said to him, after your visit, we will do whatever the statute, whatever. But we were requesting an extension. And Commissioner, I want to publicly say thank you for your heartfelt visit and your observations and not deciding something different than what you did. I really appreciate that, because I think the ending is really clear, is that we need to invest in ourselves. We need to invest in our educational system. And here we are. A year later, I could say to you, and I know this faculty well, how disappointed you were that we didn't have the FSA assessments last year. I know your heads are nodding. I know Ms. Woodford called me up and said, I will only ask one thing for you. Just make sure they don't cancel the FSA. Well, you hung on, and you did a remarkable job. And I can promise you, Governor and Commissioner, this school will remain a high-achieving school. This is not a fluke. If you take a look at our performance, it is all about the performance of these students that change their lives, and the parents, and just the smiles of coming into the school knowing that they're an A school. Their hearts are filled with joy. Also want to thank you, Governor, and the state and elected officials for providing the $1,000 to our teachers and principals. What that allowed us to do as a board and as a district is that we're giving every employee in our district that $1,000, and your ability to do that provided us the ability to leverage those dollars. So, our employees are grateful. So every single employee in our district received the same bonus. I want to say thank you, Governor, for allowing us to do that. And lastly, this district, and I know you're proud of it, you went to this Dunedin High School, but this district also has a starting teacher salary of $47,500, and we hope not to stop there. We're on our way to $50,000, and we really truly want to continue to attract the very best teachers, not only to the state of Florida, but certainly to Pinellas County. So thank you, Governor, thank you, Commissioner, for your dedicated service to our district.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And this is actually, we were here in January, February with Superintendent when the governor announced before session with our great legislators that he wanted to do a $1,000 bonus for all first responders and teachers. And we had that announcement here in Pinellas. And as with all promises that this governor makes, he keeps them. And that's in a modern day political era, it's kind of a shocking thing to have that kind of honor and commitment. So thank you, Governor, for that. I do want to say, since it is the first day of school, and you go back to last year and where we were, and I remember like in the summer and you turn on the news and it would be like still lockdowns, shutdowns all over the country, and I remember it was like Groundhog Day. You'd wake up and every day it's like, what is happening to our country? And it just wasn't the case in Florida. And I remember when we opened up schools and we had the great support of the superintendents, and the governor announced that we're going to open up schools and we're going to have face-to-face instruction, and the outcry that came with it. And I remember thinking, and part of my mind is like, well, let's see how it goes. And on day one, 99, 98, 97, 95% of our teachers across the state, despite what the rhetoric was, despite the noise, they came because they wanted to be with their students and they wanted to impart that great education. And the governor said it before. You look at Florida, and during that time, when schools opened, and the reason our schools opened is because our teachers came and they did a phenomenal work with our students. But when that happened, guess what could happen? Even our first responders could go back to work. We could all go back to work because our kids were in school and they were in that great environment. And so really when you look at it from the state standpoint, the economy, everything, our teachers literally You know, COVID attacked us and our teachers fought back, and that's what changed the state of Florida. And so for that, it's so good to be able to give you and be here with the governor to give you these bonuses. But it's also, as Mike said, it's special to be here at Lakewood Elementary, because what the governor had said earlier is it's the children that are at risk. It's the low-income kids that are most vulnerable to getting left behind and never be able to be caught up. But to be here at Lakewood, that during COVID, this horrible educational year, when everything's going to, you know, heck in a handbasket, and here at Lakewood, we have a school that went from, now, the dirty secret is you weren't an F. You were probably already an A from the previous year, but we didn't test you. But you went from an F 2 years ago to an A when you finally got tested. Yeah. And so, but it's such a testimony to the great work that you guys do. And so look at these kids and what they're going to have, because during COVID, well, yeah, literally state after state after state still closed. All the way till now, and they'll probably stay closed because, you know, the continued outcry, but not here, and especially at Lakewood Elementary. So thank you for your great work, and thank you for to the legislature and to the governor and all of us for recognizing your heroism. So thank you.
Okay, so we have the, there? Okay, so how are we going to do? People just come up and hand? All right, so Richard, why don't you read that, and we'll come and.
I need glasses.
Now we'll hand them out.
Brittany Duquesne.
Okay. Congratulations. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Lynn Price.
Right here.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
April Ash.
Thank you so much.
Taylor Chalfont.
Thank you so much.
Prince Dorsainville.
Thank you so much.
Bridget Harden.
Thank you.
Melissa Olson. Ashley Parson. Deirdre Smith. Jake Weininger. And of course, Stephanie Woodford.
Go, well, get over. You guys get in here too. All right, we got it? All right, great job. Well, thanks again. Great success story, and we're happy to be able to provide a token of appreciation for the principals and the teachers, but particularly here in Lakewood to highlight a great success story, and the effort has paid off, and it's integral for a lot of these kids' future. So thank you very much. Have time to take a couple questions before I get out of Dodge.
Governor, the White House now says that it will look to pay any of the superintendents or local school board members who defy your ban on mask mandates. Do you have a response?
So our view is, of course, that we believe this is a decision for the parent to make, just given the uncertainty about what it means, particularly for a lot of the young kids to be in that. And I think that's where the vast majority of the districts, I know we have, I think, two who are not providing the parents with the rights, but obviously we believe that the parent, rather than the government, should ultimately be able to make that decision. I'm not sure that they have the wherewithal. They're also talking about imposing a potential nationwide mask mandate on kindergartners, first graders, who knows, regardless of what the parents believe is in the best interest of their kids. And obviously, if you're talking about the federal government coming in and overruling parents in our communities, that would be something that we would fight back vociferously against. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, father in Pasco County, his daughter was diagnosed with COVID last night after spending all day Monday in school with other kids. Those kids are now back in school. This little girl is not. But the school says they cannot notify parents until they get notification from the Department of Health or a doctor's note. This circumstance will likely happen again at some point this school year. Just wondering how parents are supposed to make informed decisions about the safety of their children.
Well, I think we've had a year of this where obviously if people are sick, the school districts are doing the right thing and sending them home. And of course, if somebody tests positive today. They obviously got infected before school started, so I don't think you could attribute that to being in school. And I think what we found, fortunately, is there's actually was higher infection rates when you're just in the community versus when you're in the classroom, particularly for the younger kids. You know, these kindergartners and first graders, you know, they're not people that are really transmitting this in significant levels. So that's something that's very important in terms of looking at how that's being done. And then, of course, one good thing this year, last year, we didn't have any vaccines available. We didn't have any real effective therapeutics until the winter. We now have Regeneron, which we're going to talk more about because I think that's been very successful, but I think it's underutilized. And so we feel like we're in much better posture. And so I think what they do is just do what they've been doing. And if there's somebody that's sick, stay home. I don't think, though, we want them sending home students who maybe just had a glancing contact in the hallway with somebody, which is what, when the schools first started last year, there were some school districts in Georgia, if someone had tested positive, they would find anyone that was ever in the same vicinity, the same room almost, would get sent home. We don't think that that's the way to go, but we trust the school districts to basically follow similar to what they've been doing.
Governor, we know that pediatric cases are on the rise. Will the state be keeping track of the COVID cases in school and then producing that data on a regular basis?
I have to ask the Department of Health in terms of are they going to do school-based. I know they did last year for most of it. One thing I think is important to point out about the pediatrics, because, look, we saw this last year when school was coming in. There was a lot of things put out, and I think sometimes there's agendas at play or whatnot. So what we have in Florida is we have about 1.3% of the COVID-positive patients that are hospitalized are pediatric cases. And for the whole pandemic, we've been between 1.1 and 1.4% of the census on any given time has been pediatrics. So there's been no change in the proportion of pediatric patients who are COVID positive. Now, obviously, we have more people that are COVID positive in hospitals than we did 6 weeks ago. And so the raw numbers are increased for everybody, but there's not been an increase in the proportion. And I think that's important to point out because some people, you know, you hear a lot of stuff, you know, does Delta behave differently vis-a-vis kids than the kind of the previous iterations, which fortunately have a very minor impact, particularly on young kids. And the answer is, in terms of the hospitalization percentage, we've not seen any change in that in Florida. Clearly, we're at the top of a wave here, so you're going to see more cases and infections diagnosed. It's also important to point out that of the COVID-positive patients in hospitals, about 25% on average are not being treated for COVID. In other words, everyone gets tested who goes in, and if you're positive and you have a different procedure, you still classify it as COVID positive patient because they want to isolate and make sure you're not spreading it. For pediatrics, depending on the hospital, it's typically between 20 and 40% of the pediatric COVID positive inpatients are incidentally COVID positive. In other words, they're there for a different reason. They get tested when they come in, and then they happen to test positive for that, but they're not being treated for COVID. Also, I would point out there has been an increase in pediatric respiratory virus admissions over the last really many months, and a lot of that is attributed to the resurgence in RSV. And so that's something just, you know, as a parent, I have young kids. COVID I view as a very minor risk. RSV is a little more serious, and it just shows kind of, you know, certain things that are focused on versus not. Now, I've had doctors tell me that parents have come in with kids who were sick. They've gotten a negative COVID test and a positive RSV, and the parents were relieved at that. That's the opposite, because RSV is something that we think RSV has peaked in Florida. If you look at it, is trending down, but RSV was very modest when last year with COVID, and whether that's viral interference or whatever you want to attribute to, but it's been much higher levels throughout the whole country there. And so when you see pediatric admissions, you know, some of them may be COVID positive or suspected COVID, and it may ultimately turn out that RSV is what they end up are being treated for. And again, we think that's peaked and it is going down in Florida, but that is something that I would say, just as a parent of young kids, you know, that's a much more significant risk, you know, than COVID has proven to be. Okay, well, thanks everybody. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys soon.